Good day and welcome once again to the Relationship Marriage Hour. Oh, wow, it's such a good um, and a privilege for us to be joined today. Amen. I am your host, Dr. Alvin Hepburn, with my co host, Dr. Maria McDonald. We are here out of Nassau, Bahamas, and we are joined today by two great people of God, and they are pastors, Pastor Darville, and we're going to let them introduce themselves in a little bit. But we have a very hot topic that we want to discuss today. Will you marry me? Wow.
Wow.
That's it's going to be powerful. So you don't want to miss it. I encourage you to call a friend, to call your significant other, and ask them to join us for this next hour as we discuss this topic. Will you marry me? Dr. McDonald, let me hear your intro, and then we'll hear from Pastors Davos.
Okay, and of course, I am Dr. Marie McDonald, and I am so excited about this topic because this is a phrase that every young lady would love to hear. Will you marry me? So it's going to be provocative, and we are so happy to have our guests on the program today. So thank you, and invite someone to tune in.
Yes. Pastor Darville, you can introduce yourselves.
Sure. Well, my name is Pastor Kersch Darville. I'm a fellowship pastor of Bahamas Faith Ministries International here in Nassau, Bahamas. And this is my lovely wife, Pastor Suzette.
Yes.
Darville, we have been married this year, November 4th, will make us actually 35 years of marriage. Yes. We have been,
wow.
Yeah, so we've been in this thing for a while. So when you married?
No, I'm only 40, but yeah.
That's a long time.
That's a long time, yeah. So we've been married for quite a long time, and we have been at Bahamas Faith Ministries for that whole time.
Yes.
So it's good to be here today. Good to be here today, speaking on this topic today. Will you marry me? So we're excited about it, and we're looking forward to what we discuss today.
Yeah. Say something for us, please, Pastor Suzette.
And one of the things I really want people to know that, marriage, and we're talking about will you marry me? There's so much information that you must receive before you get married. And if you're tuning in, I think you do need to send this to someone, share it, send it to a friend, they're getting married. And the question is, will you marry me? And there are a lot of preparation that is needed before, you yes, but then before you take that step and saying, I do.
Amen. Thank you so much. And wow, we're going to kick it off right now. And Dr. Marie, when I first heard that this is what we were discussing today, will you marry me? Another question came to my mind. And I said, before we dove into will you marry me, I want to ask this question, and I want you, let's discuss it a bit, because growing up, before I got married, I was told, well, if you want to get married, write a list of everything you want. So I wrote my list.
Wow.
And people from the Bahamas, they will understand what I'm about to say right now. I wanted mango skin, long hair, Coca-Cola bottle shape. I wanted all of those things.
Yeah.
And then those were top on my list. And then I started listing out some other things. But as I matured and as I grew in God, this was the question that was asked to me. And now I'm throwing it out to you, and let's discuss it. It says we're going to be talking about will you marry me? But I want to know, will you marry you? and let's discuss that.
Wow.
In the fact of, you want people to marry you, but if you was other people, knowing the you that you are, would you choose you?
Yes.
I want to kick off.
And then if you won't choose you, then why should others choose you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll start off from the beginning.
So doctor has to start right there. because many people want to shine the spotlight on the other, but they don't want to shine the spotlight on them.
Yes.
And for you to be the person you need to be in the relationship, the first person you need to marry is yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doc, what you say?
That's a good question.
Dr. McDonald?
That's a good question, Dr. Alvin. And if I'm answering that question for me, I would say yes.
Yes.
And it's not only yes because it's me, it's yes because of the qualities, the character, the type person I am. And I know that who I am is something that I would, gladly share with someone else. So yes.
Okay,
I will marry
good.
you.
Thank you for that answer. And like we always share from time to time that Dr. Miles Monroe, who impacted all of our lives, I read a book of his, and he says it this way: marriage is a perfect union entered in by two imperfect beings.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that is just so powerful. That yes, marriage is perfect because marriage is still a good idea, because marriage is a God idea. And because it's still a good idea for perfect people, but the marriage is, but we got two people who ain't perfect entering it, and we can talk to this couple of 35 years. Explain that to us. Will I marry me?
Well, I want to tell you. Yeah, I want to tell you a story based on what you just said. Will you marry me? Well, when my wife and I first started dating that would have been back in 1987. We started dating, and dating could be very expensive, and so I learned over short period of time it was better for me to try and eat some of my family's food. So she worked very close. She worked at Commonwealth Bank there on Robinson Road at the time. Commonwealth Bank was there on Robinson Road and East Street, and we lived in Richland Park. And so I said to her, listen, we need to go by my house to eat some lunch there. So when we got there, I went and took some of the food out of the fridge, decided I'm going to warm it up, and heat it up. So she asked me a question. She said, Kersch, say, which one of the rooms, first of all, she said, I want to use the restroom. And then she said, which one of those rooms down down the hall there is your bedroom? I said, oh, the one right there in the corner, right down as you directly facing you. That's my one. And I said, but the bathroom is to your right. And while I was there getting the lunch together, she came back, and we had been dating then for about 3 months or so. And I had already been at this point proposing to her. I said, man, I know I found the right one. And so she said to me when she got back, she said, Kersch, if that's the way you keep your room and you thinking about marrying me, you got to be crazy, because I'm telling you, I had in my bedroom, I had 2 beds. One was whatever clothes I wore the day before or that whole week, everything was on that bed, and I would sleep in the next bed. And
that sounds about right.
Yeah, it was in a mess. And she was like, boy, ain't no way in this world I'm going to marry you, And I'm telling you, at this point, I'm like 25 years old. My mother had been talking to me for years to live cleaner than that. And I'm telling you, man, she said on Saturday, I tell you what, we're going to go to Kelly's, I hate to give them a plug. She said, we're going to go to Kelly's, you're going to get some paint. We're going to, she went through my room. And this is a woman I've only been dating now for 3 months. She was up on a Saturday morning. We got the paint. We went and we painted my room. We fixed it up. She made sure I got stuff on my bed, coverings for them. And she fixed me right up. And I'm telling you, from that day, I would make sure before I left home, I was making sure my room was clean. Why? Because I want to marry you. So it was from the very beginning. My parents could tell there's something special about this young lady. She has gotten my son to start to change his ways, And so the first thing when we started dating was I began to take more concern about my environment and preparing myself for mine, Being a nasty person for a lot of years, you know what I mean? Not caring about cleaning up. I then began to think about marriage, the fact now that I'm gonna be marrying someone, and this is something she doesn't like. She doesn't like a person who's gonna be, not clean.
You say nasty.
Nasty. So that's right. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of a lifetime of this person coming in my life to change me and for the better.
Yeah, and at this point in our dating, we both would have already been through the marriage class once, and twice.
Yeah.
He's been twice, and I've been twice. I
Mhm.
mean, it was just a time we enjoyed going to the marriage classes with no one, but
Yeah.
just preparing ourselves for marriage. And so when we started to date, the minute Pastor Miles put on a new marriage seminar, we were in that class again, but this time together. And so now we're planning to get married, but now we need information. And so the question is that the doc asks is, will you marry me?
Mhm.
Or will you marry you? And so that
Yes.
question is, will you marry you? And I realize at this point, oh, well, someone else will want to marry me. I know I'll marry me. And I know that based on the principles of God, and both based on the information that I would have received from Dr. Miles Monroe, at that time I probably would have sat under his feet for about 3 years. And the information, the wealth of information that would have received by then, I know I would have married me.
Right. In fact, the book that you quoted from was the book he was teaching us from before he.
Wow.
So that would have been in 1980, 1987. The book I had been written. That book came out a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So powerful. Yes. And what is a sad thing is that you have persons who are entering into relationship, who are entering into marriage, not finding out who they are, and
Right.
because they don't know who they are, when they get married, then it's all kind of chaos. And
Yeah.
one of the things that the Bible says in Genesis that I think is just so powerful, and whenever I do my marriage counseling classes, and this is the first lesson that I deal with, I talk about how God presented every animal to Adam,
Mhm.
every animal, and Adam turned all of them down. He named them, and he says, the cat is for the cat, the rat is for the rat, the
Yeah.
dog is for the dog, the bird is for the bird, but
Mhm.
there's nothing here for me.
Yeah.
God was helping Adam to find his identity.
Yes.
And it is so sad that people are entering marriage or even entering relationship hoping that the person that they're entering this relationship with will help them find their identity. And you find that people after 10, 15 years, the marriage doesn't work.
Mhm.
Reason being because I wasn't helping you find your identity. Watch this. I
Yeah.
was helping you find the identity that I wanted you to have that was
Right,
pleasing to me.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then when you now mature to finding out who you are, then you realize 10 years, well, what was Alvin trying to do? And that now brings another level of conflict.
Right.
So even before you ask that question to someone, will you marry me?
Yeah.
You need to ask yourself, will you marry you?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
talk right there. We ain't finished there yet.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot
Go
that
on,
we have
Paul.
to do, and turning and
No,
trying to
no, go
understand.
on, Pastor.
Yeah, I'm saying there's a lot that we have to try and do and figure out our own selves. And you got to work on yourself before you can get married. And so, sometimes the thing about it is before I met my wife, I kept asking, where's my wife? Where's my wife? Where's my wife? But the thing is, God had me working on myself.
On you.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
See, when you have a relationship with Christ, God sends you in a place where you're learning about you. We're so interested in wanting to get married sometimes. I'd already done the marriage seminar twice with no girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? But what I was doing, because I believe, just like you as a pastor, when God called you, he a lot of times calls you from the very beginning when you give your life to him. And even before that, he's working on your life. And so when I first gave my life to Christ, I was involved in the Billy Graham Association. I was involved in Young Men's Bible Study. I started one myself. I was doing a lot of stuff. And just like Paul says, when you got a woman, your interest is divided. And so when you are single, God can really, really use you. So here I was, I am single. I'm doing Bible studies for young men. I am involved in the church every night in church. But there's a lot of girls around, but I don't see my wife. There's someone that I'm looking for particularly. And I'm telling you that, you know, there's always young ladies in the church. I mean, there's one young lady, I mean, she was saying to me, Kersch, until you find somebody, I would always want you, kind of way, but she wasn't someone, she was a friend. And the thing is, you know, when I looked at it, it was waiting until the person came along who God wanted for me. I was about to settle. And before I could settle, God then brought my wife into my life. But the thing I was looking at was, I was being prepared. God was working on the areas of my life that I needed to be worked on. He was causing me to be able to be in ministry, even at an early age, because ministry was where he was taking me to.
Yes.
But if a woman came in my life, Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, he says, your interest becomes divided because a man would want to please his wife and the wife would want to please her husband.
Yes.
And therefore your interest is divided when it relates to ministry. So God allows us, though, to work on ourselves. In other words, you go get your education, you get settled in your job. First thing that God gave man was work before he gave him woman.
Yes.
So even while I was waiting on her, I was in my career. I was developing it. I was being sure of what I wanted to do. In fact, one of the key things that I did was Pastor Miles taught us that you must always build your business before you build your house. That's one of the principles we learned in BFF. Yes. So I had purchased a piece of property. I had my plans already drawn for a triplex before I met her. And so it was like after we were into the marriage, into the dating for like a year, I pulled out my plans and I showed her. I said, listen, this is what I want to do. So I showed her the plans already drawn, the properties already paid for. I was 25 years old. And I already had all this stuff. So the Lord was preparing me for marriage. So when I met her, I showed her the plan. And, you know, we were very rare in the sense of young persons because when I was 27 years old, just before we got married, we went to the bank to get a loan. And every time we went to go to the bank, we had to get a loan. Now, God had prepared me. So we get inside. The bank says, you got to go and see a lawyer. When we going in to see the lawyer, and he saw the application, he saw that the property was already paid for by me. He says to me, sir, she got to leave the room.
Yes.
Me and my girlfriend say, she got to leave the room. I said, she got to leave the room. He said, yeah, she got to leave. When she leaves, he says, now let me tell you something. The minute she signs this document, she's going to have ownership in this property. He says, you sure this is what you want to do? I say, yes, sir, I want to do it. He asked me 3 times, you sure this is what you want to do? I say, yes, sir, I love her. He said, loving got nothing to do with it. When you sign this document, you have interest in this property. And I said, sir, I know that I want to marry this woman. Yeah. And we were able to sign it. But you see, we were preparing ourselves. One of the key things that Pastor Miles says, he said to us, Dr. Richard Pindon said to us in all of our training that we got in our marriage seminar was, prepare yourself for the future. Like, first of all, investing in a piece of property, investing in saving, so that when you get married, and invest spiritually in yourself, prepare yourself, okay? Work on yourself.
Yeah.
My wife wants to say something.
One of the things I think when we say, will you marry me? So we just brought that out. You have to be prepared.
Yes.
Be prepared spiritually, emotionally, financially. Even if it means that you're not there yet, at least you've tried and you're started. And so one of the things I always tell young people, just as you go to college and you get a 4-year degree, some people 6-year degree, some doctors, and you're talking about 8 and 10 years. And so if that is for a career, how much more in a relationship that you're going to be in for lifetime? So should you get information? So you need information. You know, some of the churches, and I could blame some of the churches because we don't give enough information. And here's the key. If you go into college for 4 years for that career, don't you think you need at least 3, no, maybe not 3 years, but 2 years, 1 year, 6 months of information for something that is a lifetime? Will you marry me? Will you marry me if you have information? Information saves marriage or marriages. Information. You have to be intentional, and being intentional about your marriage, about will you marry that person, you need to know if they have information to save the marriage. And it's called saving your marriage before it starts. You know, and so we have to learn what are the keys. You know, more than 50% of persons are being divorced now. The question is, will you marry me? will you marry me without information? And I
Mm.
go on right now, but I just wanted to leave some time for you all to interject.
Yeah.
Well, uh,
Information.
listen, this is good. But what I want to ask you is, what would have kept you together? And
Mm.
not, it's not because you are pastors, because we have pastors being divorced as well.
Yeah.
But
Right.
what is the one thing that would have kept, or not one thing, but what would have kept you together? Now, just
Mm.
before you answer that question, we want to just pause here for station identification.
Yeah.
And you are listening to Relationship and Marriage Hour, coming to you from Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, with our special guests, Pastors Kersch and Suzette Darville. And we want to invite our audience to join us on Sundays at 3 p.m., or they can subscribe to our channel. If you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, LinkedIn, subscribe and get into this conversation. It's very provocative, and it will save some marriages. It will help others that are making mistakes and
Yes.
Yeah.
help them in their marriages. So now back to that question. What is the thing that would have kept you together all these 35 years? What is it?
Now, I want to start with that one. I want to start with that one because
Yeah.
even though you have information, when you're in the actual situation, it's different.
Mm.
And
Yes.
so I had to learn. I'm a pastor's kid. So
Mm.
one of the things I learned about myself in the marriages, it was very hard to apologize. That was
Mm.
very hard to apologize because I am a type of person, I check information and I don't say things unless I know it's right.
Good, very good.
So even when you're wrong, you need to know how to apologize. And that was very, very hard. That's very, very, very hard for me to apologize. And the second thing for me was forgiveness.
Mm.
One of the things we've learned in our marriage, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. If
Yes.
you if 12 o'clock passed and you still angry, or you need to deal with that because the next day, guess what? I mean, and
Worse.
I'm not saying that didn't happen to me. Even though I know that scripture, let me tell you,
Mhm.
I went one day without that. And let me tell you, I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I couldn't wait because, I mean, I didn't sleep. I wake up, my husband said, listen, I am so sorry. I apologize. Because guess what?
Wow.
The next morning, it was worse.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, it's like, when you put food out on the counter and you leave it overnight, and
Mhm.
then worms and whatever else in it. Well,
Yes.
that's what the situation. It was so bad. And
Wow.
so one of the things that have kept our marriages, let's deal with this before it get before 12 p.m.
Before you go to sleep.
or
Wow.
12 a.m.
Mm.
Let's deal with
Wow.
this. Don't let the sun go down. And then it's communication because you could say, well, let's deal with this. But if you don't want to communicate it, you don't want to tell them how you feel about the situation and you getting angry, you don't want to listen, then that's issues again. And
Yes.
so I don't know, I'll leave my husband to say with some of the things.
Yeah, well, you have to really deal with it. Like you said, don't let the sun go down your wrath. You
Mhm.
have to really be willing to be someone who repents, because I tell you,
Yes.
I deal with couples every week. As a pastor, I deal with some couples, two or three couples every week, and that's a
Mhm.
lot.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of times, what's going on is people don't understand that they bring history into their marriage.
Yes.
Yes.
So marriage really
Yes.
is a collection of, let me just say, a collision of history.
Yes.
Right now, inside this room, we have over 120 years collectively.
Yes.
I'm saying,
Yes.
so she's 60. Whether she may say she's 40, but
40. I'm holding.
Yes. Yes. I'm with you.
one of this before we got married. I was age 27, she's 25. So you're looking then that was 52 years right then.
Yes.
And so collectively, and you bring history, you bring a past into your marriage. When you
Mm.
bring that past in, the person learns about it over time. They begin to see things about you, the
Mhm.
good, the bad, and the ugly. And so you've got to
Yes.
learn to work through that. You have to learn how to adjust to each other's past. You learn
Mhm.
it as you go along. But there is always opportunity for you to learn how to forgive, learn how
Mm.
to communicate, learn how to do that. And believe it or not, your history that you bring into the marriage is so important to understand. Like, for instance, the first time that we had a difference, it's the way you handle it. Some families, when you're growing up, it's who can shout the loudest. You know, if you got the loudest voice and you can say the loudest, you win.
Yeah.
In marriage, you have to learn that it's not about winning; it's about it's about forgiveness. You see, so a person could say, "Well, I brought all the facts." So some people bring all the facts. You know, you'll say, "Yesterday you did this, you did that, and they bring all the facts." But the point is, no matter how many facts you bring, the Bible tells us we should pursue peace at all costs. So in marriage, you have to really pursue peace. You have to run after peace. You have to pursue it. And I believe that when you pursue peace, you will receive it. I always tell couples that there's two things that always keep the marriage together, and that is negotiation and compromise. Those two words help you. You gotta learn how to negotiate. You gotta learn how to compromise. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, he said, "Love is patient and love is kind." They tell us that's period. If you think you need to learn the whole verse, no, just those two things. You just be patient, you be kind, you can solve all the other voices when it comes to love. And so we've had to do that over the years. Every couple has to learn how to be patient, learn to be kind. They need to know how to compromise, and they need to know how to negotiate. And communication is just that.
I want to add to that, because sometimes we say, marry me, but we don't know anything about the person.
Good
I
point.
think when you're dating, you have to ask the right questions. And as a woman, I only can speak from a woman's perspective, but you're so emotional. I'm in love, and he just sent me flowers, and you forget all the information, all the things that you need to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Does he have what it takes for you to marry him? Dr. Hepburn talked about this list. I had my list too. I even had what my house should look like. I draw the house, and I'm not an artist. I had the house drawn to be 2-story. Eventually, my husband would tell me, no, 2-story will work. Okay, so I compromised, but I had all my plans written. I can see it right now in that black and white composition book. 2 pages of what I was looking for in a marriage, with my children, how many children I should have, everything. And so we talk about preparation, and part of the preparation is you have to have what you want out of this marriage. And then when you have that information, while you're dating, you discuss together, because you can't operate in different silos.
No.
He knows what he wants. You know what you want, but you're not bringing it together and asking, okay, what do we want from this marriage? And I guess he would have already proposed by then, because you shouldn't be bringing this up if he didn't propose already. But you need to have information, write it down, write the plans down, so when you come together, you could discuss, and then there's that mutual agreement. Okay, you want 6 children? No, that's not going to work. We need 3 in this day, age, and time. 3. Okay, but I just want to just say this: the purpose of marriage is to reflect God's image, to advance His kingdom.
Yes.
This is under Genesis 1:28. His kingdom, and to fulfill His purpose. And His purpose, as explained by Genesis 1:28, it says to be fruitful, to multiply, to subdue the earth. That's what we need to do. And how do we subdue the earth? Together. See, marriage is a contract, and it's a union. It's legal, and it's legal.
Yes. Wow. This is good. This is good. Dr. Alvin, just before you come back, listening to what you would have said, there are persons that may be in marriages and have a problem with forgiveness or letting it go. When I first got married, if I'm angry, I would hold that. I would stop talking, and sometimes I'd go all day, And we find that in our relationship today, that may be one of our biggest problem with relationship, especially with the female, us.
Yeah.
We hold it on. The men would get over it in a minute, but we tend to hold it. What can you say to our women that are out there listening and they're holding on to these things, but yet they want to have that healthy, perfect marriage. You know, what can we say to that, ladies? Those ladies.
I want to say, Dr. McDonald, is that just as we are called the womb man, we have other wombs. And we carry those things in our emotional womb, in our intellectual womb,
Who's that
whatever
question
womb it
for,
is,
Dawn?
we carry those things
Okay.
in wombs. And we must give birth every day, whatever situation we are. And if the birth is unforgiveness, we need to deal with it. We cannot carry things in our emotional womb because we're going to give birth to what? Marriage that will fail. And
Yes.
so, like I said, we are the womb man. We're the ones who have womb. And we must carry fruitful things in our womb. And we must deal with it every day. Do not carry that over. So unforgiveness could lead to so many things that is not fruitful in the marriage.
So you're saying even though the man may be wrong, she must still let it go in order to make it work.
Well, Pastor Kersch talk about compromise. One of the things we have to do is compromise, and together you have to communicate. Listen, I didn't like what you did. I didn't like how you treated me. I didn't like the words that you used. And Pastor Kersch also mentioned that we carry history. Your history different from my history. A word you say to me is different from what I hear than what he might hear.
Mm.
And his background, it might not even mean it, but you holding on to that. And without that communication and saying, listen, what you said to me, I did not like. And you have to be able to communicate that. And, we're going to communicate it in a way, but the man have to also be able to say, you know what, she's emoting right now. But don't say you're emoting, because that's another word that we hate.
Yes.
Say you're emoting right now. Calm down. Oh, calm down. So what do you think I am? Okay, tell me to calm down. So that's another situation.
Yes.
So we have to be
It's a
able to
trigger.
understand. Don't tell me calm down because you think I'm already irate. Okay, so you have to communicate that in a way that doesn't cause her to even be worse.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so communication is key. Communication is key. And so how you communicate the word and the messages that you're trying to say to your wife is very key to how you're going to address the issue and her response to the issue that you're addressing.
Yes.
No, he might not be right. No, you might not be right. But you come to a point. And that is why we're saying get information. You have to get information because communication is one of the key for you succeeding in your marriage. You have to communicate.
I want to just respond to that. When you think about it, some people want to be right. And I tell people, you could be right and you be right all by yourself. Because if you're pursuing to be right and not to be forgiven or to have humility, you'll be right all by yourself. Sometimes people like to bring all the facts. He said, I like to bring the facts. Yeah, you bring all the facts. But you may not have peace. You see, the Bible tells us to pursue peace at all costs. In relationship, pursuing peace is more important than being right. It should be, You would more rather have a peaceful relationship, a peaceful home than being right. Sometimes people are pushing for their rights. I was right and you were wrong, and it takes you a while to learn that I'd rather have peace than be right. And I think over the years you tend to learn that. Hopefully, you tend to learn that. Sometimes when you first get married, you're learning each other. You're learning how to adjust each other in the good times and in the bad, and those things. My father was not a Christian at the time we first got married, but there's one advice he gave me. He said to me, he said, Kersch, in marriage, it's going to come days when tongue and teeth don't get along. I didn't understand what he said. But I tell you, in a short space of time, my wife and I had our first difference. And so, and then you learn how to work through the difficult times. You learn how to adjust to each other. You learn, that's what you mentioned, forgiveness. You learn how to say, I'm sorry, because, you want peace more than you want to be right. And until people, sometimes it takes people years to learn that principle. That I rather have peace than be right, you know. And when you get to that point where having peace is more important, like giving up your rights and giving up the fact that you might be right, you know, that I prefer to have peace. And that's how you go from 1 year to 35 years.
And one of the things to do is how to, and I'm like information, because I know information is key to succeeding in your marriage. And if you say you're going to marry me, do you know what my needs are?
Exactly.
How do you expect to please me? Do you know what my number one, do you know what I like? And so that's what dating is all about. You can't just be saying, okay, let's go to the movie. What benefit are you getting if you're not discussing how I'm going to please you? And like I said, marriage should be intentional. You're dating someone, be intentional. You know, let's go just for a minute. Some of the basic needs: admiration, affection, conversation, domestic support, financial support, family commitment, honesty, physical attractiveness, recreational companionship, spiritual fulfillment. Any of those are your needs? And so you are at the altar about to say, I do, and you don't know one iota about your husband.
Wow.
You don't know one iota about your wife because you didn't ask the question. You did not really date her. And I want to stop right there to say something to the men. You know, some men, and I just say some, and I'm talking from a Christian standpoint. Don't just date your wife and right after the honeymoon, you stop dating her. You wowed her. You know exactly what you were doing. You wowed her. You know exactly what to wow her with. You sent her flowers and you call her baby and honey. Oh, you know I love you. You know, you're the best thing that happened to me. You're lovely. You're beautiful. I love your nose. Oh, I love your mango skin, Dr. Hepburn would say. You know? But what happened after the marriage? What happened? Yes, will you marry me? So the question is, when you say, will you marry me? Are you going to continue meeting my needs? Are you going to continue to encourage me? Are you going to continue to admire me? Are you going to continue to be my recreational partner? Are you going to help me to fulfill sexually? What are the basic needs? And so learning the basic needs, everybody has different needs. So you find out that your husband, after he started dating you, you realize the road is hard, is food. So if the road is hard as food, you know exactly what he likes. Why would you not fix potato salad? You know he likes potato salad, but you fix it planted.
You know that. You know, potato salad.
Wow.
Yes.
Dr. Alvin,
So
you seem
true.
to be having a delay. Dr. Alvin?
Wow, that dog. Yeah, I think we're having technical difficulties because I even got knocked out and I had to come back in. But what I've heard is just so powerful, and everything that was said, and I like that information, Doc, Pastor. I love that information. In order for us to have a successful marriage, and as y'all were talking, that is why that question was asked. Will you marry you? Well, when you ask yourself that question, then you start to give yourself information about who you are, what your likes and your dislikes are, so that when you sit down to have a conversation, you can have an intelligent conversation and say, well, I like this and I don't like that. I tell you, Pastor Darville, one of my brothers got married, and Tanya, who's my wife of 19 plus years now, she came over to Grand Bahama for the wedding. Okay, so they got married on a Saturday, and on the Sunday, I don't know whether I was conducting service at my church or preaching, but we were all in the room. Tanya, my mother, and my sisters. And my sister went to my closet and said, Alvin, what are you wearing? And I'm like, well, I don't know. So she picked out the clothes. And my mother said, okay, I'm going to go iron your clothes. And another sister got my socks, and she pulled out my socks, and she pulled out my shoes, and she cleaned my shoes to have me all ready for church on Sunday. Well, later that night, they all left the room and left Tanya and I in the room. And Tanya said, Alvin, before you say anything, I got something to say to you. If you think I'm going for you, what just happened? You are greatly mistaken. I'm not the woman.
She
could have said that because, I was pampered. Listen, I'm the last of 9. So
she is my kind of girl.
I love it.
She is my kind of girl.
Wow.
And she said, you need to make a decision now, because that I am not going to do. I don't have time for that. So you have to do what you got to do. You have to stay here with your mommy and your sister. You were able to engage in that conversation because she knew who she was.
Exactly.
What she was able to give and what she was not going to do. She was able to set the boundaries. As we move on in our talks today,
I think
lost.
Okay, good.
I think that we get lost, or we want to shortcut the journey. And the journey is where the information is given, received, and the conversation happens. Everybody wants to get to the marriage, but nobody wants to go through the journey towards the marriage, because it is the journey towards the marriage that makes it last. And that scripture came alive to me, because the scripture didn't say he who findeth a woman.
No.
It says he who finds a wife. Which means, and I'm like, well, God, how could she be a wife if she's not married yet? She should be married. And she takes the title of a wife, and he says, no, the title comes before she even gets married. The title comes for you being a husband before you get married. Even before I proposed to Tanya, I already start thinking about us, our future, when we have children, what we want to do, how we going to make it. And those are the discussions that we have, and that's the journey towards. But you have people who just want to ask the question, will you marry me? But you haven't done your homework for them to even answer that question, because when they start questioning you, if your answer is, I don't know, or I have to think about that, or you have to give me a minute, well, what have you been doing on this journey? You should ask that question yet. Let's talk about that.
Yes. I want to address, you talked about how, you were being catered to. And well, my husband, he's the only son. And so, yes, so you have to look at these 5 sisters and 1 son.
Wow.
And so, in how we are right now, when I say how we are in the world system, in this system, in my parents' day, well, my great-grandparents' day, the father went to work. We used to say they're going out to get the beef, okay? And so, and the woman stayed at home. And nowadays, sometimes the woman working even longer than the men. All these things have to be addressed. So we talk about compromise again. And so if both of you work and you realize before you go in this relationship, you can't say, listen, you're the woman, because you're the woman and you're the wife, you need to iron. You're the woman, you're the wife, you have to cook. No, not in this era. In this era, you have to sit down and say, okay, honey, all right, I see that you're working 10 to 12 hours. I can work from home. And not only can I work from home a couple days, I can also work, I only work 8 hours. Now, you season up the chicken. When I come home or while I'm home, I will cook it. And so it has to be some compromise. You can't say, listen here, Alvin, you ain't know nothing about cooking. I am going to do the cooking. Yeah, you may say that, but then what is Alvin doing? What is Dr. Alvin going to do? You know,
sit down and eat.
You know, sit down and just eat. That's not going to work. Like I tell you, Tanya's my kind of woman. She's my kind of woman. No, we have to share this.
Very much.
Yes, yes.
Share responsibilities, because I am working sometimes harder than you, and some people, they bring their work home. Now, wow, that's another something for another day.
Yeah, we gotta talk. Yeah, that's another
day.
Another day.
Because
yes.
that has to be discussed. But we have to bring that to the fore and say, okay, these are the things, and then expectation brings disappointment. So get that expectation out. Sit down and discuss what each person will do, so that your expectation of what your husband is bringing to the table, what you are bringing to the table, and what you're supposed to do, that all laid right there for discussion. And then there we go with compromise. Well, you know, my husband, let me tell you, my husband, he irons better than me, right? So I knew that. I knew that he could iron, you know? So while I'm doing breakfast, honey, can you iron my clothes?
That's a compromise. Love it, love it, love it.
What are some of your, you know, not just your weaknesses, but what are some of the things that you're good in? What are your strengths? What do you bring to the table that we can maximize this relationship? And one of the things we have to do is, nobody should have a bachelor degree in Kersch. I should have that master degree. Okay? Nobody should know him better than me. I should know him. So that dating and after you get married, of dating, knowing him, understanding each other, so that you can maximize not just your relationship, but cause each other to actualize, fulfilling the purposes that God called you to in relationship and individually.
Wow.
Powerful.
Very much
powerful. And all of that is needed so that when I hear what you just said, Pastor, this is how we grow together. This is how we grow. We grow when we share the information, and when we come see like Dr. Miles taught all of us, when we see that, listen, the marriage is perfect.
Yes.
You're not, your spouse is not. Y'all are working in a perfect union.
Yes.
So like your husband said, like Dr. Kersch said, that listen, teeth and tongue, they swallow sometimes. But I never. My said I was eating one mango, it was so juicy. Then my tongue started to hurt, but when I saw the blood, my tongue didn't say to my teeth, okay, I'm done with you. I just hided this. I am out of this. No, it was not intentional hurt. So we still got to work together. We still got to work together. And see, that's why marriage is not for the weak, and it's not for the immature. Because boy, we all know that sometimes you gotta have them serious conversations. And the serious conversations is to not break the marriage, but to build the marriage. And you can't have those. And we going back, Pastor Suzette, to what you said. We can't have these conversations if there's no information.
Not,
and you can't bring information if you don't know who you are. So
Absolutely.
Mhm.
will you marry you?
Yeah.
After you didn't find out, boy, listen, ice the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you can enter the conversation and
Oh,
say,
yeah.
yes, I'll marry me. So
Yeah.
therefore, I'm ready. Talk
Yeah.
about it, Pastor Krish.
Yeah. You know, one of the key things that I found from my studies is this: most persons are not ready for marriage who are 24 years and under. And there's a fact, there's a
Wow.
reason.
Oh, wow.
And the reason for that is self-discovery. You see,
Yes,
there's a
yes, yes.
that you got to go through to discover who you are.
Mhm.
And you see, one of the key things is you got to develop yourself. You got to prepare yourself for who God is preparing you for,
Yes.
so that when you meet, you're ready for them. Some people want to prematurely get to that point without even discovering what they want to do in life. You know, some people, they don't even know what work they want to do. I mentioned it before. One of the first things that God did to man was he gave him work. When Adam met Eve, he was already fully into his career, so to speak, naming the animals and taking care of the garden. He was doing the things that God had called for him to do. So we have to prepare ourselves for who God is preparing us for, so that when that person comes, we're ready for them. And there is a process to it. And I mentioned earlier about the fact that I kept asking God. I got saved at 22 years old, and I had to keep myself for 7 years because I got married at 27. So that's a long time. I was sexually active, prior to becoming a believer. So having to now discipline myself, go through that whole time of disciplining myself, bringing my body under subjection until 27, that was a lot of years of preparing. So learning how to, first of all, maximize who I was as a person, developing myself in my career, learning how to invest, learning how to save, all these things, so that when I met my wife at 27, beginning to date, I was already 5 years in my walk with God, already a Bible teacher of the Word of God, small groups leader, preparing myself along the way. So God was preparing me and bringing me to a place where I was spiritually developed for when she came into my life. You cannot beat the process. Okay? You cannot beat the process. The process of development, preparing yourself for who God is preparing you for. That is the most important key, so that when a person comes into your life, you then grow together and you learn each other and you develop. Because love is also learning how to love someone. You got to first love yourself before you can love someone else. And so God helps us in our singleness. You see, while you're single, you're being developed. Body, soul, mind, you're being developed. And spiritually and intellectually, so that when that person comes along, you are ready for them. Getting information is the key as well.
Yes.
Learning about who you are, but getting information, reading books and materials about dating and marriage and this kind of stuff. Reading those things and preparing yourself. So when the person comes, you can identify them and they can identify you as a good person to marry, because you're growing and you're developing yourself.
And that too, very powerful, Pastor. And that too is,
Very.
as you go through that process in finding out who you are, then you learn your likes and dislikes.
Yes, absolutely.
And in knowing your likes and dislikes, when life now starts to bring you, watch this, going back to the Genesis story, when life now starts to bring you the cat, the dog,
Oh my
the
God.
rat, all of
Yes.
these different things, you can
Right.
say, that one ain't for me.
No.
Yes.
That
Yes.
one ain't for me.
Right.
Now, mind you, you don't demonize the cat, because the cat's for the cat.
Yeah, exactly. That's for somebody else.
Yeah.
That's somebody else
So,
thinks.
so
Yeah.
you just say, mind you, yours out there, it just ain't me. You
That
continue
ain't
to
me.
move.
Yeah. You just
You
wait
continue
for
to
yours.
move. You continue to move until woman comes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you got it. Yeah.
And when
Then
woman
you
reach,
then you
you
know.
know that. You know how you know that? Because
Yeah.
you've already gone through the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Amen.
And you have the information. Oh,
Yes.
Doc, man, listen, we are almost on the time. We got a little more than
Oh,
5 minutes,
wow.
Doc. Oh, talk to us,
Oh,
Doc, before we leave.
yeah, this time it's moving too swiftly. Perhaps we may have to do a part two of this session. But you said, you made a very bold statement. The 24-year-olds are not ready for marriage. And I can imagine hearing some of them in the background, but you know what you're talking about. I'm ready. But when I look at it, they move into things because on the basis of I love you.
Right, right. Yeah.
This is what is expected of me, or she or he is beautiful, handsome. But
Mhm.
when we hear the question, do you want to marry me? I mean, will you marry me? What do you know about that person? And you
Mhm.
said it earlier, Suzette. They know absolutely nothing, and it's only on the basis of I love you. This is
Mhm.
expected of me. So, could this be the reason why we are having so many broken marriages, so many divorces that are going on? It's because of these main, it rather, it looks insignificant ingredients in our relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, as I said before, because I know we've kind of run out of time right now, but the information that you receive, the dating, the learning about each other, asking the right question, and come with your questions. Don't be ashamed to
Mhm.
ask the right question. Some people, let's say, for example, if I have a family and you see all my family fat,
Mhm.
okay, I still slim now when you dating me.
Oh
And you
Lord.
see my mother fat, my grandmother fat, my great grandmother fat.
Your
Now
daddy
you
fat,
say
your
you love me,
sister's
and
fat.
then you say to me, you know what? You are my rib. I just found my rib, my missing rib.
Mhm.
But the rib is slim right now. Okay, and a little later that rib get a little solid. Will you still love me?
Mhm.
These are the things that you have to look out for.
Yes. Yes.
Look at. I mean, don't close your eyes when you're dating.
Yes.
You can be able to love that person if they get a little voluptuous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and so you have to look around.
Mhm.
And it could be history. Don't have to be history now. It could be how they eat.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, and then you start cooking the same thing your mommy cooked. You start, I mean, eating the same thing your great grandmother eat,
Mhm.
and maybe you may just need to shift.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, everybody in the family fat, but there's your one rib that you saw and said, "Will you marry me?" And she is slim.
Now.
Okay, now what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
Will you
yeah.
still marry me?
Mhm.
Will you
Mm.
still marry me when you see that everybody else solid? Will
Mhm.
you still marry me? You have to look at this thing.
Yeah.
And if that's not the case, leave that other person rib alone. It's not
Yeah.
your rib.
Thank you very much.
And let's talk about that a little bit. I know we run out of time. Let's talk about that a little bit. Not every woman that you date belong to you. Not every man that you date belong to you. I mean, instinctively you can know this the one.
Mhm.
For some reason, this the
Mm.
one.
Yes.
Kersch daddy saw his mother. They were both nurses at the time, and he said when he saw her walk to the hospital, "That's my wife."
Mhm. See that
Never
Okay.
time?
met. He
Here
said,
comes the bride.
"Here comes the bride."
Yeah.
2 years later, I think they
Wow.
got married.
Mhm.
You know,
Powerful.
I'll give you a story
49 years.
about me and my husband. We were on BFF, I think 2, 3 years before
Yeah.
we know each other.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, God opened up our eyes, and like we said, I ain't see nobody here for me. Nobody. I ain't see nobody in BFM for me.
Mhm.
Then one day, God opened up our eyes, like, wait a minute,
You see all
there
around.
is one.
Yep.
And we saw each other, I
Mhm.
think, about the same
Time.
time.
Mhm.
And then I guess God said,
Now it's
there's
done.
your rib.
Yeah.
There is your rib. It's
Actually, 2 weeks before or so, a month before we started dating, we were hanging out with the same friends, all in the same place, and they were going in a circle. We had one of the ladies from church home that we all used to gather on a Sunday after church.
Mhm.
And the question was asked in the circle, "Do you see anyone in BFM?" I said, "No, I don't see anyone."
yes.
In
Yeah,
fact,
the
I
same
did not
thing.
want to say anything at that point. 2 weeks later, we're out on the beach together, a group of us all talking and hanging out together.
Mhm.
She was talking, and the way she was answering, I just loved it. And I said, the next day, I said, "Would you like to go out on a date?"
Mhm.
That was it. About 2 weeks or a month later,
Mhm.
we were dating.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes the person is
Right
around us,
there.
right there,
Right there.
right there. But God is like He has a veil over your eyes not to see them until the time and the
Until
season.
it's time.
Yes. So that's it. And then the
Okay.
time is there.
Just let me say that you're listening to the Relationship and Marriage Hour coming to you from Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio with our special guests, Pastors Kersch and Suzette Darville. And we want to invite you to join us every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. And we want you to just click on that button to subscribe to the channel if you are watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Dr. Alvin?
Powerful. Out of time, not out of words. I think we have to do a part 2 of this next week Sunday. Will you marry me? and I want to end it today by saying I'll think about it. Let me think about it. Hey, man. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.